Since winning the national title in 1980, Georgia football has spent decades attempting to get back to the top. While they had many close opportunities, the team continuously fell short of that ultimate goal of being the #1 team in the country at the end of the year. But over the past 2 seasons, Kirby Smart, the players, and the rest of the staff have helped to change all of that, and after coming up short so often, the school has won back-to-back national championships with convincing seasons. So, how did the program finally get over the hump and become a special part of college football history? This is the rise of Georgia football. We're going to drop into the year 1980, where the Bulldogs just capped off a 12-0 season with a Sugar Bowl win that saw them be crowned national champions. Under head coach Vince Dooley from 1964 to 1988, the program was completely transformed and taken to the next level. At 31, he was hired with some questions around whether or not he was the right man for the job, but by the time he left, Georgia had been elevated to that next tier of college programs. In this time frame, they saw their first Heisman winner, second claim national championship, and 20 different bowl games, including a stretch of 9 in a row. Replacing Dooley would be Ray Goff, who served from 1989 to 1995, and Jim Donan from 1996 to 2000. But the best seasons from those two came in 1992 and 97, where in each season, they finished with 10 wins. While the consistent winning was still in the picture, the national championship was fading further and further from the present time. The image of the program nationally was also an interesting one to note. With Ray Goff, the program wasn't performing well at all from 1993 to 1995, and had compiled a total of 17 wins in that time frame. You can then enter Jim into the fray, who served from 96 to 2000, and while the program won 4 straight bowl games, they couldn't get over the hump of getting to double-digit wins, and by the time he left, the Bulldogs had lost to in-state rival Georgia Tech in 3 straight seasons. And now here we are in 2001, and Mark Richt takes over as the head coach. Mark's tenure at the university was an important one because of how he brought Georgia back into the national light and got the team further up that mountain. Immediately, the program saw the results, as in 2002, they finished at 13-1, winning the Sugar Bowl and receiving the #3 rank in the AP poll to close out the year. 4 straight 10+ win seasons were achieved from 2002 to 2005, and there were a few conference titles in between this time frame as well. But the Bulldogs would continue to stumble closer to the finish line, and even the slightest stopped them from reaching their pinnacle. A close loss to Florida in 2002 and 2003 would be too much to make the national championship, a loss to Auburn in 2004 stopped them from making the conference title game, and back-to-back one-possession losses to Florida and Auburn ruined their shot at the national championship. But now, moving forward, the Bulldogs would have their star quarterback in freshman Matthew Stafford to propel their offense into another level. In his 3 years, he proved to be the best quarterback prospect in the nation. But again, Georgia fell short in each of those 3 years. 2012 would probably be the last time in Rick's tenure where the Bulldogs were close to the national championship, and behind the play of Aaron Murray, Todd Gurley, and a stellar defense, they went 11-1 in the regular season, earning a spot in the SEC championship game against Alabama. The winner of this was guaranteed a spot in the national title game, given that they were both ranked in the top 3. It was a close back-and-forth game with each team taking the lead from one another. Georgia was trailing by 4 with under 2 minutes to go. They were driving, getting inside the 10-yard line of Alabama. With under 10 seconds and no timeouts, Chris Conley caught a deflected pass getting tackled in bounds, and as the seconds ran off the clock with the Dawgs unable to do anything, their chances of immortality left too. Following this loss, Mark was in charge for 3 more seasons before the sides parted ways. Throughout Rick's tenure, there was certainly a lot of hope and expectations, but seemingly every time, although there were wins and success, Georgia fell short of reaching that ultimate goal each time. In his final press conference, Mark noted how high expectations were, and he stated, "I think that the expectations have been built to the point where if you don't win a championship, it's kind of miserable around here. Nothing really mattered, no amount of wins, NFL prospects, conference titles, just a national championship." Now, with the identity of the program certainly in a better spot than it was before Richt, it now needed someone to finally bring the Dogs to that next level. A coaching search spanned wide, and the brass at Georgia landed on Alabama assistant Kirby Smart in 2016. Many of Nick Saban's assistants had gone to other SEC schools and had found some success, but Kirby was hoping to be the best of them all. The platform was certainly there at Georgia. They had the expectations, but also the resources to be successful. Smart had been one of the best coordinators in the country, where he was an excellent recruiter and led Alabama's defense to be a top 10 scoring unit in the country throughout his entire tenure there. Not only did Georgia rebuild their football staff, Kirby Smart helped to rebuild the program from the ground up. Smart had a mission when he set out from day one, and that was to recruit better than anyone else. One way that this would be done was through finances, and with a lot of time convincing, Georgia provided that for the entire program. In due time, the university got themselves an indoor practice facility on campus, an instant upgrade over the situation that previously existed where the players had to bus over an hour to practice if the weather was bad. The university also allocated more funds to help out with recruiting, and from 2016 to 2018, they would reportedly spend more on recruiting than any other school in the country. Just weeks after he was hired, Smart and company got to work, where they immediately recruited a top 6 recruiting class in 2016 with just a few weeks to National Signing Day. His first season in charge of the program on the field would be rough, and by mid-season, Georgia went from being ranked number 9 to not even being ranked at all. The Bulldogs ended the year at 8-5, but had some promise moving forward. Next year, Georgia recruited the number 3 class in the country, which included 5-star quarterback Jake Fromm. Georgia just got another 5-star in Jacob Eason the previous season, and while he was slated to start again in 2017, he got injured in the first game of the season. So, along comes another true freshman at quarterback, except this time, Georgia didn't look back. They defeated number 5 Notre Dame in Fromm's first start and won 7 straight following that. Fromm's presence, a stable offensive line, and a dynamic trio of future NFL running backs in Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, and DeAndre Swift helped to propel an offense that scored 24 points a game to an average of 35 the following year. They would march their way to an 11-1 regular season finish, with the only loss coming to Auburn, 40-17, but they would avenge that loss in the SEC championship game with a 28-7 victory. So now, finally, Georgia was in the college football playoff and found themselves at the doorstep of the national title. Their first opponent would be Baker Mayfield and the Oklahoma Sooners, and it was one of the best games in the modern era. Georgia would end up winning 54-48, putting themselves into the championship game. A date with Alabama sat between them and their ultimate goal, and while they shut down Jalen Hurts in the offense in the first half, a second half switch to Tua Tagovailoa saw the Tide storm back, head to overtime, and then throw a game-winning touchdown to Devontae Smith to secure the national title over Georgia. A heartbreaking way to lose the national championship, and it would take some time to mentally recover. At least on the field though, Georgia had to continue to move on. Once again, Georgia ranked in the top 5 in recruiting, and as a matter of fact, they finished with the best class in the country. Heading that class was 5-star quarterback Justin Fields, giving Georgia another talented player behind center, along with numerous other 5-stars to give the program one of the deepest rosters in the country. High production meant high expectations, and the team started the season ranked in the top 3. 6-0 was how the season started, but a midseason loss to LSU ultimately put a dent into the hopes of making the playoff, but they once again went through the regular season with an 11-1 record and a berth in the SEC championship game. Alabama was the opponent, and again, Alabama prevailed, once again signaling the end of championship aspirations for the program. 2019 was again the same, and the team, although very talented and won many games, fell short to an SEC West powerhouse, this time with one of the best teams in college football history, the LSU Tigers, beating them in the SEC championship game and knocking them out of the playoff. However, throughout this time period, despite coming up short, Georgia was recruiting better than ever and developing prospects better than ever. There were so many different award winners and finalists, even at the kicker position with Rodrigo Blankenship, and Georgia had some of the best position rooms in the nation. So sure, while the desperation for a championship wasn't met, the progress was there, and it was always going to break through. With Jake Fromm leaving following the 2019 season, Georgia would have some limbo at quarterback, and in the following 2020 season, they wouldn't make it back to the SEC title game, with rival Florida unseating them for that spot. They would have 3 quarterbacks try, but only one would prevail, and it was perhaps the most unlikely one. Wake Forest transfer Jamie Newman was expected to be the guy initially, but he opted out of the season before it began. USC transfer JT Daniels played for a few games, but injuries ultimately ruined his chances. Dwan Mathis had an opportunity as well, but it didn't go how either side would have wanted. So that left the walk-on Stetson Bennett to lead the way. Stetson wasn't a stat sheet stuffer who could wow you with every throw, but what he could do was lead the team and make the necessary plays to win the game. But because of his shortcomings, he would be widely ridiculed by many, where he wasn't regarded as a top quarterback or even someone you could win a title with. What was the result of him starting? The culmination of something that had been brewing since 1980. Those stellar recruiting classes began to show results on the field, and Georgia would arguably have the best front seven in the nation for the 2021 season. Defensively, they allowed just 10 points a game, and on offense, they flat out bullied teams off the ball. Running or throwing, it didn't matter. You were not going to stop this offense, and you certainly weren't going to score on defense. They won some ugly games, but they also dominated in just about every performance imaginable. The defense was about as beautifully designed scheme-wise as it could be, and the talent on the field took care of the rest. Georgia would go 12-1 with a late season loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game, taking them out of the number 1 spot, but they were ultimately safe in the playoff. Their first opponent in the playoff would be Michigan, and they were taken care of pretty quickly. This set up another rematch with Alabama, and fate aligned that Georgia would win this game. The night before the game, Kirby Smart saw Vince Dooley in his hotel, and he knew it had to mean something. It was a tough 4-quarter fight, and Georgia took the lead with 8 minutes to go and then scored quickly with 3 minutes to go on a touchdown pass to Brock Bowers to go up 26-18, but Bryce Young had one more drive in him. Bama would progress down the field, but on 3rd down, Keely Ringo intercepted a ball to seal the national championship for the Dawgs. All of the criticism on the players and staff, and all of the waiting for this moment had finally been met. Georgia was a national champion. So, what did they do the next year? You know the rest. Despite losing some talented players, Georgia had the depth to fill in, and they looked even better. This time, they left no doubt, where they went an astonishing 15-0, dominating just about every team except for the Missouri Tigers for some odd reason. They played a tough semifinal against Ohio State, and a missed field goal late saw them back in the national championship game, where they secured that by halftime after defeating TCU. Perhaps a huge reason for the rise came from an improved offensive production, which started with the hire of offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Under Monken's guidance, Georgia went from being ranked 59th nationally in total offense in 2019, the year before he arrived, up to 8th this past season. The Bulldogs also improved in the air, going from 72nd in passing yardage in 2019 up to 15th in the last year. The defense has always been either good or great at the university, but now they had an offense that helped them just consistently put teams away. Perhaps the most notable improvement with the program came from the ability to recruit. A quote from Rusty Mansell of 24/7 Sports summed this up best, as he states, "The biggest difference is the ability to close and how Georgia has trended up at the close of a recruiting cycle instead of trending down. Mark Richt was able to get Georgia consistent top 10, top 12 classes, and I guess the problem Georgia fans always had was they seemed to fade off as signing day got here. They would lose some kids or not close on signing day. That ability to close on recruits resulted in them being able to win those games by the small margins. The man himself, Kirby Smart, certainly helped to achieve that. His personality has been something widely noted among players, recruiting analysts, and coaches. From Pace Academy head coach James Slade, he states that Kirby is the cool guy the kids like to talk to. He doesn't guarantee anything in his pitches, only that if you're good enough, you will play, and that can happen from the jump. He and his staff have leaned on plenty of underclassmen in the past to guide the team. Guys like DeAndre Swift, Keely Ringo, Jake Fromm, and the list goes on and on. But Kirby hasn't done it all by himself. The players have showed up on the field, and his staff as well has helped them develop these players and get them into the building and come up with schemes for the team to be successful. And now here we are in present day 2023. There was a lot of heartbreak, and while I don't have the time to go through every single game, hopefully that was conveyed. Georgia tried, failed, and every time they got right back up and tried again. In an improbable situation, the Dawgs delivered on the hopes and dreams that fans and previous members of the program had set out for. Kirby Smart helped to build the school into the football powerhouse it is today, and he wasn't alone. The school's investments into the sport, relentless recruiting, the schemes to win the games, and the players' production on the field ultimately got the job done. This has been the rise of Georgia football. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and as always, I will see you guys next time.